I'm Brian Kane. Thanks for watching. This is a quick video series that I'm putting together to talk about AI design, looking at AI and artificial intelligence from a design perspective to find out what we can do, what types of products we can make and bring into the market that will be successful if we put design thinking and design process into AI. There's been a lot of technical developments in the last few years, but most of that's being led by big corporations and universities. A lot of it's hidden and secret. So my goal is to get people to start working hands-on with a lot of these new products, because I think that there's going to be some discoveries that happen in people's garages with interesting inventions from people thinking about it from a design perspective and not necessarily just from a technology perspective. The technology is moving along very, very quickly. There's all sorts of free tools and APIs that you can use right now. So there's really no reason to not get involved with it, especially if you're interested in high-tech design or any type of design, really. So what happens when we apply design thinking to artificial intelligence? Well, what is design thinking? I'm not going to give a whole talk today about design thinking. It's been fairly well worked out, but you can take a look at this Design Thinking 101 chart from Don Norman at the Nielsen Norman Group. This is the standard process. It's an iterative, circular process where we start by empathizing with people and observing them. It's an observational process up front. We take a look at what people are doing. Then we define what we think this new product is going to be based upon the empathize phase. Then we ideate, or a more simple way to say that is we come up with ideas. Then we prototype, and that's my favorite part of the process, is coming up with rapid prototypes. It doesn't have to be thought of as a finished product, doesn't have to be polished or finished, but we come up with something that we can, as quick as possible, get people to interact with. Then we go into user testing, and we see how people use it. And then if that works, then we can go into the implementation phase, which is when the product gets actually made and brought to market. And then once that happens, we go through the cycle again. Much has been said about design thinking. I'm not going to define it here, but very little has been done in terms of design thinking for making these new generation of artificial intelligence products, and that's really the focus. I think the biggest issue for designers that are getting into the field to think about is that things change fundamentally when products become intelligent. Now, what does that mean? Typically, we have a relationship with objects where we think that we understand what the object is. The objects tend to not move. They don't do things on their own. If we do something to them, they will typically respond, hopefully in the way that we ask them to. But when you start having intelligent objects or products, they start to make decisions on their own. And when things make decisions on their own, as human beings, we need to decide if that's friend or foe. And so if you think about it, there's all different life forms that we interact with on a daily basis. We have pets, and then there's wild animals, and there's birds and plants. And we understand our relationship to these different life forms, but sometimes we need to test them. So the first time when you meet a dog or a cat, or maybe you see a bear in the woods, you need to very quickly figure out what your relationship is, friend or foe. So now we're going to start to see that happening with objects. So it might be that if you see a chair moving on its own, that you need to decide very quickly if that's friend or foe. I think part of what we're seeing right now is that as these smart products start to emerge, that some people are seeing them as foe, and there's a challenge in getting them accepted. And in many ways, that's because we are at a point where we're starting to invent a new species of intelligent object, intelligent experience, and we need to really think about that up front. People love machines, and we've been working with machines for a couple hundred years now. We certainly have a lot of machines in our life, and they do different things for us. But typically, the process of designing a machine or designing an interface for people to work with the machine, or human-computer interface design, has been leading towards increasing amounts of control for the user. So if you think about that in the digital realm, what you can think about is the way that the mouse, for instance, gives us fine control over where we can move the pointer on the screen. That gives us a lot more control than just tapping around with arrow keys on the keyboard. And it's a very direct relationship between our body and the machine. We feel like we're in control. Various types of software has become very, very complex through the years. And if you think about even the typical software that we use every day, something like Microsoft Word, the majority of the features inside Microsoft Word, we never use them, but they're there just in case you need to get to that level of control. So the idea typically with HCI has been to provide as much sense of control as possible to the user. Now, that completely changes when you start talking about artificial intelligence-based products. Because when you interact with your typical AI type system, you're going to ask it for a high level concept, and it's going to interpret your request, and then it's hopefully going to make a decision and give you a response that is appropriate, but you're not giving it that level of specificity. Now, what does that mean for a typical person? So if you think about the experience of, for instance, going to a restaurant, some people are comfortable just ordering an item off the menu, but a lot of people, when they order something off a menu, they want to know, does it have this in it or does it have that in it? And can I change this for that? And I want things done exactly, very specifically the way I want them, and put this on the side or cook this a little bit this way or that. And they want to get exactly what they want. However, using an AI product is very similar to going into a restaurant and sitting down at the table, and when the waiter comes over, you just say, why don't you bring me something that you think I might like? Or, I'm in the mood for a sandwich. And then the waiter's going to go back into the kitchen and magically come out with exactly what you like. And so you're trusting it to make that decision for you, but along the way, you're giving up control. And this is very, very different than the typical goal and process that's been involved with user experience design and HCI for pretty much as long as that field has existed. And so it's a fundamentally new experience, and it's a fundamentally new field, and it's open to exploration, and people are going to make all sorts of innovations and learn about it. And one of the opportunities right now is through doing advanced user testing and simulation and prototyping, we can create simulated experiences and just see how people respond to them. And then based on that, we can decide which way to move in terms of developing these new products without having to commit to a major engineering project. So we can save a lot of time and money and effort by analyzing and testing out these products first, instead of having to do a major technical commitment and then wind up with a product that fails when it hits the market. As I'm sitting in the studio right now, it's 2018, CES 2018 just finished, and there's a whole slew of intelligent products that are out there. A lot of them are Internet of Things related products. What I'm hearing is more no than whoa. There's all this new functionality out there, and people aren't sure that they like it or they want it. So how can we make things that people really love? That's an interesting question. There's a lot of confusion around exactly what AI is. But from a design perspective, I think we can define it differently than from an engineering perspective. Engineers, and computer scientists, they have a very technical explanation of what it is. But from a design perspective, I would argue that we can think of any product as being either AI or artificially intelligent based on a couple different factors. So does it appear to be alive? Does it make decisions for you? Does it do things that are unexpected? And does it have a personality? And if it does any of those things, then I think that we can think of that as an AI-related product. And on that level, there's a lot of history to look at, to choose from. There are dolls, certainly a long history with dolls and interactive experiences. Even though they're fake, where they appear to be alive, now they actually are. So from a design perspective, I would say the moment that you start making a product that is going to make a decision on its own, or that's going to do something without necessarily being asked to do it, then you're dealing with AI. And that presents a whole level of interaction design that really needs to get thought through. AI is emerging as a new, interesting technology. It's probably going to get really huge. There's a whole lot of money that's being invested in it. But I think it's unclear exactly where it's going. There doesn't seem to be a killer app yet, and the people that are dominating the market right now are the giant companies. It makes sense. But in many ways, we can think about 2018 right now like the World Wide Web was in 1994, in that it's just starting, it's just becoming accessible. People are just starting to make their own thing with it, and it's unclear exactly how it's going to evolve over time. There were a lot of misconceptions about the web when the web first started. One of them was that people weren't sure if anyone would ever buy anything on the web. Well, we know that they will now, but looking at it through the lens of 1994, it wasn't clear. So now if we're looking at where AI technology is going and AI products are going from 2018, it's sort of unclear where it's going. So it's important to keep an open mind and look broadly at where it can go. A lot of what went wrong at the beginning of the web is that people were taking older products and they were trying to adapt it to a new medium, and that didn't always work. One of the examples of that was a product called Web TV, where they tried to take the internet and put it on the TV, and you interacted with it with a remote control. And that just wasn't really right. And again, we see it's like, oh, well, this is something that gets displayed on a screen, so let's put it on the TV and use it from the couch. And we know that now that that's not really the way people want to interact with the internet, but that wasn't clear. We're also hearing a lot about driverless cars. If you think about when cars were starting to emerge 100 years ago, they were still referred to as horseless carriages. And so we're hearing that same language now referred to cars as being driverless cars. Why do we think that we're making this to take the driver away? It's still a car. No, it turns into a whole new thing. So once we get into this world where we're having all this smart technology in a vehicle, we can redesign that vehicle completely. And if you look at this picture that I brought up on the screen, you can see that the initial design of cars, it really was a horseless carriage. They hadn't really even thought through how the automobile should be designed and how it should work. It's just a carriage without a horse. And if you look at a similar picture to where these supposed driverless cars are right now, it's basically a car with a bunch of hardware slapped on top. And it does not look very inviting or exciting. Many people get scared by that. But regardless of that, what it means is that if you're thinking about a new generation of vehicle, we can really think about everything. We can redesign every part of it, the look, the feel, everything about it. It doesn't need to be yesterday's car with something removed. It can be a whole new thing. So let's talk about narratives. Most of the products that we're seeing right now were thought of 50 years ago in science fiction. And there's been this sort of mad dash to create this futuristic vision that we saw as kids, and now we're trying to make it now. Cell phones in our hands and driverless cars. We're along the path of fulfilling a vision that was created based on a narrative of the future from 50 years ago. But we can make some new narratives because odds are it's not going to be that. It's going to be something different. And a way to look at that is just in recent history, if you look at the predictions of where the internet was supposed to go when it started, it didn't wind up there. Instead, what we got is Facebook and Twitter and social media and YouTube and the things that people are doing on the internet, in particular with their phones. It's mostly social and entertainment, a lot of time wasting. And there's a lot of stuff on there that's practical. We can go shopping on the internet. We can look up and do research, and we can do a lot of work-related things. But the majority of where people are spending their energy and their time and their focus, as well as the technical infrastructure that has been built to support that, really has to do with entertainment and social needs of people. So when I start to think about that, my guess is that all this new artificial intelligence technology is probably going to wind up in a similar place where people are going to use it for entertainment purposes. They're going to use it for new ways to communicate with other people, to connect with other people, or they're going to use it as ways to have companionship and help to enhance human relationships, more necessarily than being helpers and assistants. And if you look at the types of products that are being brought to the market right now, they're all focused on personal assistants and helpers. And it's all very practical oriented kinds of things. But my guess is that over time, that the entertainment value, that the fun and unpredictable and maybe even humorous applications and products are the ones that are going to dominate the market. And when you think about how the internet evolved over time, many, if not most or all, of the gigantic companies that dominate the market right now didn't really come into existence until 10 to 15 years after the internet became a popularized technology. So odds are we haven't seen the next big thing yet. It's about to happen. And so that's why it's a great opportunity to start getting into it now. We need to stop making what we've seen in sci-fi movies. We need new narratives. Stop making what you've seen in sci-fi. When we make that go away, then we leave room for the next generation of ideas and products to emerge. And that's really what we want to think about.